what's up, folks? Welcome back to On Texas Football. And, of course, welcome back to our Tuesday night live stream. Thank you guys for joining us. Happy Election Day. All right, give you that too. All right, we're not going to get into any of that, but for everybody out there, we know that's of course, the main topic of conversation in this country. But, of course, we're here to talk some Texas football on the show. We'll talk about the college football playoff rankings. I don't know why they chose today, of all days, to release the college football playoff. Bobby, did they think about that? Was that a thing?
I don't think so, but I think they just said they were going to do it on Tuesday nights and went with it. And
we need it. We need the distraction.
We do need the distraction. I will agree with that. There's no doubt about it. Longhorns, Rod, looking pretty good so far on it. CJ's got some recruiting news for us as well. A young man reclassifying to the class of 2025 from the class of 2026. He's currently committed to Texas, but taking other visits. So we got to keep an eye on that one, CJ. A lot of stuff going on right now in the world of Longhorn football.
Yep, and of course, we'll look ahead to the Longhorns. It's a game week to their upcoming opponent, the Florida Gators. We'll also talk about some of the comments from Sark. He has Monday media availability yesterday, so we can get to some of those comments as well. Got an injury update on some of the guys who are unavailable for the Longhorns in their last matchup versus Vanderbilt, so we can talk about that too. And Sark mentioned the offensive, the mojo. He mentioned mojo. Offensively, they're missing some of their mojo. I don't know who told Sark about mojo. He's a West Coast guy. Mojo's a Southern thing. So Sark, somebody mentioned that to him about the offense missing some mojo, but I like it. I think it does give you the visual about, hey, the offense really right now have not been the best version of themselves the last few weeks. So we'll talk about that too. But of course, you guys are our main priority here. So we'll get into all your questions, comments, all your whatever you want to throw out there as a topic. Super chats jump to the front of the line. You can interrupt the show at any time. So you guys know you drive the show. Wherever you want it to go, that's where we'll end up. So we appreciate you guys participating no matter where you're joining us from. We know today is one of those days where everything is a welcome distraction, hopefully, and we can provide you with that. But let's get right to it, gentlemen. Let's not waste any time. Of course, CJ Vogel, we got lifetime Longhorn joining us, as well as Bobby Burton. So we got 3 lifetime Longhorns on the show today. Let's dive into it. College football playoff rankings came out today, and my man Matthew behind the scenes will provide you with the graphic here. But there you go. There's your college football playoff rankings as it stands. The Oregon Ducks at the top as the number 1 team. Then Ohio State number 2. You have Georgia at 3. You got Miami, which is 9-0 at number 4. The Longhorns are at the number 5 seed, and 6 Penn State, 7 Tennessee, 8 is Indiana, 9 BYU, 10 Notre Dame, 11 Alabama, the only 2-loss team that makes it into the top 12 teams here in the college football playoff rankings. And then Boise State looks like they are the group of 5 nominee, if you will, group of 5 candidate that right now is in the top 12 as well. Gentlemen, what are your thoughts? CJ, I'll throw it up to you first. What are your thoughts about the first college football playoff rankings and where the Longhorns are at number 5?
Yeah, I mean, for Texas and being amongst the teams with 1 loss, you see why that 5th seed is so important, right? You get Boise State, and then you get to go play what is likely to be BYU or whoever wins the Big 12. That's the path you want. Now, as Texas being the 6th seed, ranked number 5, obviously in this college football playoff poll, it still presents a path that you could look at and say, okay, this is a bit more favorable than having to play Oregon or Georgia, right? You know, Miami, while being undefeated, while having a great quarterback, defense, not necessarily up to what you would see from the Oregon Ducks or Georgia Bulldogs. Texas obviously knows that firsthand with Georgia. So I think this shakes out pretty well, right? You know, Texas, again, they need to go up. They need to win these final 4 games. You don't want to put this up to the committee's hands because while there are still 4 games remaining in everybody's schedule for the most part, there will be more losses, but you know, we'll talk about it with strength of schedule and other 2-loss teams with similar resumes. It doesn't lock you in as we maybe thought it would earlier in this season or early before the season began. You know, sitting there thinking a 2-loss SEC team would be a shoo-in. I don't think that's going to be the case when you start looking at the teams who are right on the fringe with SMU turning heads. You know, a lot of teams 15-16, A&M, LSU. A lot of these schools are making things a lot tighter. So Texas, good spot right now. You take just getting in the door and we'll see what can happen. But that race right now for being the 5th seed, that'd be huge if Texas cannot win the SEC championship game.
4 Big Ten teams compared to 4 for the SEC.
Yeah.
That was my biggest takeaway. So one only for the ACC, Big 12, the Boise State, and then Notre Dame.
Yep.
That's 4 and 4. You know, we said all along, could this be 3 or 4 from the big conferences? And as of right now, I mean, look at the first teams out: SMU and Texas A&M. Well, SMU is going to play Miami. So if they go in, and does Miami go out all of a sudden, and A&M go in? I mean, look, that's what I'm getting at here. It's close. I mean, they're putting 4 in right now from both of those conferences. That was my biggest takeaway, guys. From this, they're not going to give Texas Tech in 2 losses or whatever they, right?
2 losses almost takes you out of it.
Yeah, if you're in one of the lesser leagues, there's no doubt. Yeah. And Alabama already has 2 losses, don't they?
Yep, they're the only 2-loss team in the top 12.
Right. I mean, and so you will have, and Alabama, by the way, has if they get past, who do they have this week? I can't remember. Alabama has LSU this week. Alabama gets past LSU, Alabama's going to be in if they're already in. I got news. All they got to do is beat like Charleston Southern and Auburn.
Yeah,
they're done. And so there is going to be a 2-loss team there if these rankings hold. I'd also say this: if I'm the 5th ranked team, I'd love my draw right now. If I'm the 6th ranked team, I'd love my draw right now. I mean, because that gives you the quarterfinals is Miami or BYU. Texas and Ohio State would take either of those matchups.
In a heartbeat. Yep.
Yes. So the importance, in my opinion, now sits at either being 11, 12, 5, or 6. You don't necessarily want to be 8, 9, 7, 10. That's the way I look at it. You don't really want to be those numbers. 5, 6, 11, 12.
I agree with you.
That's where I'm at.
Yeah, no, and do we for the Longhorns? Do you prefer they have if they could get the bye? I mean, and obviously those are the teams who end up winning the conference. How much does a bye matter to you guys? Does it matter that much? Is it huge to you?
I think it's huge.
Okay.
I think it's one of those things. You know, you have the conversation in baseball all the time where it's the hot bats stay alive. You see wild card teams make runs to the playoff pretty often in baseball. You don't see that with NFL teams where it's that extra game kind of beats you up. Now you do see teams coming off the bye at times who are a little flat, right? They have that week off. They don't start hot. This is still a game where I'm sitting here thinking if Texas has to play Alabama and then go play Miami in this hypothetical, what's going to be left in the tank for them if they have to go play Georgia in the semifinal? And then if they want to win it all, you have to play Oregon or someone like that in the final. That is a gauntlet. I don't care. You're in 4 games in a row right now to end the season. That's a lot of football to be played right now. And Sarkisian's completely right. We're sitting here, 11 weeks in the season, and it's probably the midway point. That bye week's the last break Texas will get with this given schedule. You need to either find a way to get into the SEC championship game and win that to get the bye into the top 4, or I don't think it's a bad thing if you miss the SEC championship game, because then that bye, it's a tougher road, obviously further on, but that bye week to clean up nagging injuries. Could you imagine if Texas had to play a college football playoff game with no Andrew Makuba and no Isaiah Bond? That would be a brutal, kind of hurdle to overcome right now. So I think it's vital to have a bye one way or the other. It's just kind of pick your poison whether or not you win the SEC championship game or not.
Yeah, no, good point. I'm with you on that too. And of course, the Aggies being the second team out. And I agree with Bobby. The way it's set up, listen, this is going to be a Big Ten SEC dominated playoff. They're telling you right now. They're just letting you know. They only got one Big 12 team, one ACC. Notre Dame, we know Notre Dame. There are separate rules for Notre Dame. There always have been, always will be until they join a conference. And if Notre Dame is good, they're going to be in. And then they have their one group of 5 representative, whoever that's going to be. And right now it's going to be Boise State or SMU. But they're pretty much letting you know, and Bobby's right. It's an SEC Big Ten show. That's what the college football playoff is. And I'm interested to see if they're going to let another 2-loss team into this thing, depending on how everything shakes out in the last few weeks of the college football playoff, the college football season before the playoff. All right, so there you go. Those are the first college football playoff rankings. The Longhorns, of course, they still got business like everybody else to take care of. Florida will be on, obviously, on the schedule coming up this week. We'll talk about that a little bit too, and talk about some of Sark's comments coming out of his Monday media availability about the Florida Gators. He is very complimentary of the Florida Gators, saying basically that they're going to be one of the best looking teams that the media will see. He said they're going to be one of the best looking teams they will see. That's, I think it's kind of a backhanded compliment. They may look good, but I don't know if they play good all the time. What Sark is talking about there. All right, so we'll get to that. But first, let's thank one of our sponsors for tonight's live stream. Let's thank Duck Camp. Duckcamp.com, by the way, is where you should go check out all of their great they have great apparel, folks. Premium outdoor goods for the outdoor spirit in all of us. Duck Camp is dedicated to providing the best outdoor goods so you can outdoor good, whether you're an avid hunter or you prefer fishing, or you're like me and you like to hang out around the campsite or enjoy the camaraderie of the campfire. Duck Camp is a brand that understands the culture of outdoor living and the good times and good friends that come along with living an outdoor lifestyle. Go check out their new fall selection at duckcamp.com. Already got my items in that I went to get from their new fall selection. Looking forward to wearing that. Actually, when it actually is some fall weather down here in Texas, I think it just got a little bit cool. So go check out duckcamp.com, whether it's hunting gear you need or whether you just want to make sure that you are in style for the latest fashionable fall gear. They have it all there at duckcamp.com. We appreciate them sponsoring our Tuesday live stream. Before we get to some of the questions and the super chats, I do want to bring up a more somber note. One of our colleagues, Blake Monroe, his son Colt, in practice today had an injury, ended up being a very severe injury, had to be taken to the hospital. So the details obviously are something that we'll spare you, but ended up being very serious. They're still at the hospital. So our thoughts and prayers with Blake and his family and with Colt, hoping everything works out for them. But just wanted to make sure we share our concern that we hope everything works out for them. That just happened. He shared it on social media. Otherwise, we wouldn't have shared it. But I want to throw that out there too to Blake and his family.
Yeah, really thinking about it right now, guys.
Yeah, and if we get an update during the show, honestly, that's obviously appropriate to share. We'll share it with you guys. But it was something that was top of mind and on the hearts of all of us here on the show today. So just want to throw that out there. Didn't want to make the show awkward, just want to throw it out there and hopefully everything works out for Blake and Colt. All right, let's hit some of the questions here. Oh, Ashley, this actually is something that's relevant to the show. Ashley says, can someone explain what zealous reclassification means? This is actually relevant news. You put out a tweet about this earlier, CJ. Tell the folks exactly what's going on with this reclassification.
Yeah, Zelus Hicks 2026 commit will be reclassifying to the class of 2025. So Texas now has 22 commits in its 2025 class. Again, right on the cusp of that top 5, probably now into the top 5 on the majority of those recruiting ranking services. But that's a big news for Texas because originally you look at it in the sense that the secondary recruiting has kind of taken some bumps and bruises as this cycle has gone on, but you can now bump in a top 50 national player in the class of 26 to the class of 25, and he is now in that class with Jonah Williams, which makes for a heck of a safety haul in this 2025 class. That's going to be really important for Texas. And one thing is to keep an eye on that I thought Jerry actually made a really good point on for the spring season coming up is Jonah Williams recovering from that clavicle injury, not expected to play spring football. However, Zelus Hicks now reclassifying into the class of 2025 will have an opportunity to get onto the field there as well. So we'll see what that means for the Texas safeties room. Of course, Andrew Makuba expected to depart this year. Derek Williams coming off of an ACL injury. So it's going to be a thin, light room that will give Jordan Johnson-Rubel and Xavier Filsaime a lot of snaps. But now you get some run for a new cat in the Texas safeties room right now. Zelus Hicks, a really, really talented football player, a lot bigger in person, a lot older than your average junior. So he could have been in the senior class at the moment, and you see why that's so important to get onto campus right now as a senior next year. A heck of a football player, a great addition, I say in quotes, because he was already committed to Texas. But someone that Texas will only have one more month to hold on to rather than 13 for a full year. Of course, he was at Tennessee this past weekend, but someone that Texas is very thankful to have in their class, and a heck of a football player to be joined up with Jonah Williams in the safeties group.
I would add this. I mean, the one thing that also has happened, he is one of only 2 safeties Texas is recruiting for this class. Jonah Williams out of Ball High, now Zelus Hicks, and Jerry, to CJ's point earlier, have been reporting that he would be likely part of the class of 2025. Now we're waiting to see if those are the 2 safeties for 2025, and that's why Blake Gideon wasn't out there pushing and beating the bushes for another safety in 2025, Rod. Another comment there is elsewhere at defensive back, there's really only one other guy right now that is definitely expected to visit Texas anymore, and that's Grayson Littlejohn, the young man out of Tampa that Jerry went and saw yesterday. He's expected to come in for an official visit this weekend. Right now, he's a corner, Rod, that runs 10'8", about 6 foot 175. Yeah. So the secondary right now, Dorian, they're still trying to get Dorian Brew in as well. Dorian Brew, of course, the young man out of Conroe that's currently committed to Oregon.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about what the Longhorns, I believe we've had some discussions about what they're losing. We're obviously focused on the season, but what they're losing after this season, they're going to lose a lot in that secondary after this season. They'll lose a lot of their key pieces, some guys that have been around for a while. Kind of reminds you of the O-line, guys who have been on a part of that group for a while. And, no Janae Barron, he's going to move on. Andrew Makubu just came in, but he's going to move on. Michael Taft Daddy, is going to move on. So it's really interesting what they're going to do in terms of acquisitions at the in defensive back and in the back field there. All right, let's get to some more questions. This one comes from Kenneth at Bobby and Rod. He says the strength of Texas team was supposed to have been the O-line. I don't feel like they have been. Do you guys feel the same way? This is a big week for the O-line coming off the bye week, because I feel like all of the issues that have been the points of criticism from Longhorn fans about the team, the pass protection, the penalties, the lack of a dominant run game or a run game that can impose its will. I feel like all those things come back to the O-line. So I feel like if I'm watching anything versus Florida, Kenneth, the number one thing I'm watching is the O-line. Is there improvement there in pass protection, penalties, because most of the penalties are also from the offensive line, penalties, and can they get a push in the running game? Florida's, as Sark mentioned, they got SEC bodies. It's still Florida. They may not be the most functional, buttoned up program at this time in terms of their culture right now and the way they compete. But they still got great athletes. I mean, even when Texas was down, Texas still had some of the best athletes in college football on their roster. Same thing with Florida in that regard. So it will be a test just going up against guys who are, I think, some SEC caliber athletes at Florida on the lines of scrimmage.
I think the offensive line remains a team strength. The question is at what level? I thought it could be dominant. I don't think they've been dominant. And maybe that's because of who they've been playing in the SEC. I thought they were dominant early in the season. And when they got into conference play, that got negated pretty quickly. Yeah. You don't think they were dominant early? I mean,
I don't know. I wouldn't use dominant. They were good. They were above average. I thought in pass protection more than anything, that was their best quality.
Yep.
I think that's a bit disappeared as of late.
Yeah.
But to be the best offensive line in the country, I think a lot of that, I mean, half of that is creating run lanes. And what was the big issue that we were talking about 4 or 5 games into the year is where's the explosive run game? And we saw that against Oklahoma when Trey Wisner really kind of took the reins as the number one back. Was it just the transition from Blue to Wisner and the difference it took from each of their skill sets as a runner? It could have been that. But at that same point, you would have expected some big holes to be opened up organically against a ULM or a UTSA, right? That's expected to happen when you have maulers at Texas going up against the defensive lines at those said schools. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. It's just the way that college football has gone over the course of history, right? Bigger teams, better players that they dominate in the trenches. It wasn't dominant in those first couple of games. And that's where I think, pass protection was great. You didn't really see much pressure on the quarterbacks through most of the first half of the season. But that's disappeared. And when that running game still isn't creating big explosive runs, now the quarterback's getting sacked, what's the strength? And I think it's a bit of a identity crisis that had to kind of be looked in the mirror over this bye week. And I liked what Sark said on Monday. It's one of those things where I don't want people to press. I don't want them to go above and beyond trying to do more than they're asked to, because when that happens, especially in the offensive line or when you're asked to block someone every snap, you're going to try to do a little bit more. And when you do a little bit more and you hold on for that extra step, then you see yellow napkins tossed all over the field, right? And that's been just as big of a hindrance as anything else performance-wise for this Texas offense over the last 3 weeks or so.
That's a good point. Yeah, sorry, talked about the mojo. They're missing that mojo. I think the offensive line is the mojo. I do. I think there's a lot of that because there's pass protection. That's the penalties that put you behind the chains, having the ability to run the football when you need to. I think the mojo is the O-line and how well they're playing. I think that's part of it. But, yeah, we haven't really seen this offense clicking. And maybe it's Isaiah Bond. Maybe when they add Bond back to the mix. But they don't have that explosive elite speed threat that can stretch the field as much as Isaiah Bond does. I mean, that could be part of it.
When did he go out against Georgia? Do you remember, CJ? Because he didn't come back all the time and play as much against Georgia as we thought.
He played about 60% of the snaps. I know it wasn't his normal amount because he and Matthew Golden normally lead the Texas wide receivers by a wide margin in a snaps per game situation. It's normally around 75 or 80%. So he was on the field north of 50%, but not his normal amount. And obviously he only had, I believe, 2 catches for 8 yards, one of them being the touchdown, another not necessarily in stat sheet, but he had the 2-point conversion in that third quarter as well. So when he was on the field and when he was able to give it a go and they designed it to go to him, he was able to provide just not the downfield threat with the big playability that we've seen in other opportunities this season.
And he got hurt in the Oklahoma game, correct? Yep. Like in that game. So maybe it's him not necessarily being able to provide that world-class speed element to the offense. It could be, or just, maybe it's an amalgamation of all of those different things. You're talking about Isaiah Bond, the Quinn Ewers injury, which we'll talk about here in a second because Blake has a question, and the offensive line not playing at an elite level in SEC play. Blake's question here is, do you think Quinn's struggle is due to better competition, or does the injury have him gun shy in the pocket? He used to be dominant in the 10 to 20 yard passing range. What are you guys' thoughts? Injury, level of competition, both?
It's certainly a combination of both, right? That first play against Oklahoma, he gets sacked, he gets pressured, he's down on the floor, and he gets back up. And what did we see the next quarter? It wasn't the Quinn Ewers that we had seen previously. And I think a little bit of that is saying, I don't want to get hit again. I'm maybe not 100%. If I get hit one more time, then my season might be over. And I'm not saying that was the case, but I'm trying to go through what his mentality might have been, because the play certainly reflected that. Now, that certainly can change, and I thought he bounced back well in the second quarter. He found some sort of rhythm in the second half against Georgia. I thought the first half, we talked about it, 17 completions against Vanderbilt. He looked like he was getting back to rhythm. He was stepping up in the pocket more in the second half. He was running a little bit. That was the Quinn that lit the world on fire against Michigan. A guy that was being able to evade pressure, throw on the run, and make everything look easy. That's been absent, but I thought that he made it a little bit more so look like himself against Vanderbilt. This bye week should, again, get him back to 100% health. And if that's the case, you should be able to see in Ewers that we saw earlier in the year. And for Texas's hope, you better hope so, right?
Yeah.
I think that I don't think it's the injury having him gun shy in the pocket. I think it's just him being gun shy in the pocket. I don't even think it was the injury, first of all. Second of all, is his struggle due to better competition? Somewhat. I mean, I think Georgia – if Oklahoma gave him fits, what did Georgia give him? Nightmares? Yeah. And he was seeing ghosts against Georgia. Yeah. He was at times, too, against Oklahoma until the run game started working. Right. Then that's when Trey Wisner started popping some runs. And Oklahoma had to commit more to the run game. My thing is this. I think it's primarily him just seeing an increased level of pressure, overall pressure.
Yep.
On a down by down basis. And he doesn't have to be sacked to be affected. Pete Kwiatkowski used to talk about this with Texas when they weren't getting sacks. Hey, at least we're affecting the quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
The year before, we weren't even affecting the quarterback. Now we're at least this is Quinn Ewers. He's being affected.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's due to an increasing competition.
No, that's a good point. And I've been talking about that for a while. That's what NFL scouts want to see, how Quinn deals with pressure. That whatever it is, whatever situation, third down, whether it's a simulated pressure, blitz, cornerback blitz, 3-man pressure, when the pressure actually, obviously affects him, when it's actually collapsing the pocket, what's his decision making in that time? Right? What's his decision making in that situation? Does he decide to abandon the pocket, get rid of the football, extend the play? So you look at his hot route. If it's a 6-man blitz, I think that is the question going forward. Can he mitigate any damage that is done when teams decide to apply pressure? And I think he's going to get blitzed more too, because the blitzes are working. You're getting, if you're Vanderbilt, even with Georgia, those blitz rates were really high, and they were actually getting a lot of return on their blitzes. And I think you'll see that even in the Florida game, you'll see it going forward.
Attacking tight ends and where a running back's expected to go, that's kind of where you've seen the most pressure, and that's, again, one of the emphasis, that they had in practice over the last week and a half is, hey, Jaden Blue, Trey Weisner, where are you supposed to go on every play? Hey, Gunar Helm, make sure you're communicating with a Kelvin Banks and a Caleb Williams. Know that what your responsibility is on every snap. That way we don't have those instant busts and Quinn's on the ground before his wide receivers have any chance to create separation down the field, because that's been an issue against both Vanderbilt and Georgia. And again, to get to where you want to go if you're Texas, that can't happen.
Yep, I agree. That's why the bye week came at a perfect time for Texas. How about this one from Lou Dog? Lou Dog, thank you for the question. Said, look who's leading in receiving in the NFL, the tight end from Georgia, Bowers. We need Gunnar to be a big part of the offense when Quinn is getting pressure. Quinn does go to Gunnar when he's getting pressure. Actually, remember I think it was like a 24-yard, a 27-yard. It was somewhere in there. It was a third down versus Vanderbilt. I believe it was 3rd and 7, if I'm not mistaken. It was the hot route. Actually, it was a 6-man blitz. I remember because I was watching it the other day. 6-man blitz. They brought the corner. They brought a safety on that 6-man blitz, dropped 2 linebackers, and it was obvious that the hot route was Gunar Helm because it was a 3-by-1 set, and Gunar Helm was the tight end on the wide side, the field side of the formation, and he runs the hot route. It's a quick slant, and he hits him, and it was a perfect throw by Quinn. And honestly, you could argue Quinn probably should have thrown it to the corner. He should have thrown it to Matthew Golden, because go back and look at the play. Matthew Golden is wide open because it was a busted coverage. They blitz the corner, and then the safety is not over the top of it. So Matthew Golden just kind of runs downfield and puts his hand up. He's open. Hell, Silas Bowden was open. I think he motioned out. So CJ Ramirez was the player I'm talking about, because they ran a double slant. My point is, the hot route was Helm. And Quinn was thinking pre-snap, my hot route, because he knew they were coming.
It was one of his best throws of the night, Rod.
It was. That's just funniest part. It was right in a small window. It was a great throw. But my point is, like, he diagnosed it before the play and knew hot route is Helm. He's my guy. I'm getting into him. But to your point, what are you guys' thoughts? I mean, Helm has been unbelievable this year. If you argue, you can make the argument he's one of your most explosive receivers too. Go look at his explosive plays, meaning 15, 20-plus yard receptions. It's like him and Bond at the top of the list.
Hey, he's making more people miss than any other receiver on the roster right now. That's what's more surprising to me. It's not just that he's the outlet. He's actually making people miss in the open field, because he does get a lot of one-on-one assignments.
He does.
Whereas a lot of the throws behind the line of scrimmage, it's Isaiah Bond trying to, crease 3 people, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Gunar Helm's getting an opportunity to actually make some moves.
Yeah, 100%. That and the contested catches have been the biggest surprise for me with him, because he's mossed 3-4 guys now.
Yep.
I mean, it's coming at times.
Get against Georgia and Vandy.
Yeah.
Oklahoma.
And Oklahoma.
I mean, it's been impressive. And that was the biggest thing for me coming into the year is when Texas has to go to their tight end, and we saw it more over the middle with Jatavian Sanders a year ago. Can you rely on your tight end to come down with those big passes? That was what made JT so special was his mitts. You know, he had the one-handed catch against Baylor. He had a number of catches over the middle on the slot seams. Gunar Helm's been tremendous on just 50-50 jump balls. And to y'all's point, when you combine that with the after-the-catch ability, I mean, he's been the complete tight end for Texas so far in the passing game. And that's a beautiful sign. On the positive note for the future, I also got to ask him on Monday, you know, how does the development of Jordan Washington coming along? Because, you know, you're going to be looking across the line. We talk about losing a lot of pieces in the secondary next year.
Yeah.
You know, who's going to replace Gunar Helm full-time? Is it Jordan Washington? Well, he told me that Washington's going to be a beast. He's going to be a force at Texas for his time, and he's very much looking excited to what kind of stats, what kind of numbers he can produce when it's his time to shine.
Bro, I'm telling you, this is crazy to think about. I know I'm going to get to one of our sponsors here in just a second, but now you're talking about tight end. You're talking about Jordan Washington. I agree. He looks good. I remember from the spring game. I really like the way he looks. I remember there's like some recruiting guys saying, oh, you know what? We actually we underrated him. Like right after watching spring, I said, yeah, we might have underrated him as a prospect. You might have probably should have been a higher grade for that guy. But think about last year, you had JT Sanders, and now what Gunar Helm is doing. Gunar Helm's not working himself into being a mid-round pick in the NFL draft at tight end, which is really tough to do because it's not a high-value position. My prediction was that JT Sanders was going to end up starting for the Panthers by the end of the season. Well, he's already starting for the Panthers, actually. This weekend, he had one of his best games of the year. I think he had 4 receptions, like 80-something yards for the Panthers, had a big 40-something yard catch and run. He had actually hurdled the defender, leaped over the defender, just looking like, you know, the JT Sanders in his prime here at Texas. And actually, he's 23% target per route run rate in the last month. He's averaging 2.4 yards per route run. He's actually right now playing like one of the best tight ends in the league. And now you got Gunar Helm, one of the best tight ends in college football. And now you guys are telling me the future is bright because Jordan Washington is going to play tight end. I don't know and then we know going forward, some of the athletes they got, you talked about the big athletes coming in. Some of those guys are projected to be tight ends too. Sark says it's the second most important position in his offense behind quarterback. And I'm just starting to think, I'm like, man, this offense could really transform into being more of and you've talked about this, CJ, and we've got into it, how Sark is leaning more toward just 12 personnel. 1 back, 2 tight ends. It's possible Texas becomes one of the premier universities and programs for tight ends in the future, the way it's looking, if they can start this pipeline, JT Sanders balling out, and then a Gunar Helm gets drafted balling out, and then you start to feature these guys. Guys, like before Sark, this was a wasteland. Tight end was an endangered species on the 40 acres before Sark got here. Now we're talking about having a pipeline to the NFL of tight ends. That's pretty impressive. Among the other things Sark has done, I ain't gonna lie, that's really impressive to revive the tight end position on the 40 acres, which at one point was almost.
You went from Bo Scaife to David Thomas to Jermichael Finley at Texas. Those are 6, 7, 8 year tight ends in the NFL. Bing, bing, bing. If Texas can keep that and deliver on that, Sark had some great tight ends at Bama too, and utilized them.
Yep.
So there's no reason for him not to be able to continue it in Austin, in my opinion.
Yeah, I just kind of thought about it when you bring up the Jordan Washington. I think Jordan Washington is going to be a really good tight end, potentially at Texas. Then there's some guys, you know, who are these other guys talking about? Is it Nick Townsend? Is he one of those guys you talk about, Bob?
Nick Townsend, Emery Winston, both really talented. What do you do with a guy that might be an H-back like Michael Terry?
Exactly.
You might be able to play Michael Terry in 11 personnel even make it look like 11 personnel, and it's actually 12 personnel if if he's a true hybrid, right?
Yep. He makes you malleable.
You
can be multiple personnel groupings simultaneously with a guy like that on the field.
That's right. And that'll really screw with your squeeze splits, people, of how you cover.
Yeah, and think about in the SEC, that may be more valuable than just being a straight up spread team with the elite speed on the outside, being a team with dynamic athleticism and speed, but in a hybrid form.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hybridism.
And that's what Jordan Washington brings, right? He has a basketball background. He's athletic. He has great hands. He can move well. And then you add in Nick Townsend, who ran 10.9 at about 235 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
Speed's going to be there, and it's going to be in that hybrid form, but both guys are about 6'4", 6'5". So it's not necessarily like you're losing a whole lot of, mass on the interior, on that line, if you will.
Yeah, but how you match up when you teach those guys how to block? How do you got to have some freaky linebackers to match up with that, or some freaky safeties to match up with that, and not everybody does. Okay, let's thank our friends over at HardGR Roofing before we move on here. Thank you very much to our friends over at HardGR Roofing, with offices all over Louisiana, Arkansas, and of course the great state of Texas, including Austin, Texas. HardGR Roofing will take care of all of your roofing needs. Plus, they're Longhorn friendly, folks. You won't find a more pro burnt orange company out there. They have partnerships with lifetime Longhorn Bert Arbin, as well as lifetime Longhorn Stevie Lee, and that's when we have him actually on the winning drive, my former teammate and lifetime Longhorn Stevie Lee, courtesy of HardGR Roofing. So we appreciate all of their support, and we want to support the most pro burnt orange roofing company out there. Support our friends over at HardGR Roofing, and today you can get a free roof inspection. You can't beat that, folks. Free 99, best price you're gonna get. You can get a free roof inspection. Just reach out to our friends over at HardGR Roofing at hardgrroofing.com, or give them a call at 512-645-3202. That's HardGR Roofing. Know who's on your roof with our friends from HardGR Roofing. Thank you very much for sponsoring our Tuesday live stream. All right, getting back to questions here, and we'll review the college football playoff rankings. They came out. We hit them earlier in the show. For those who joined us a little bit late, we'll come back to the college football playoff rankings, I assure you, for any questions about that. But the Green Lantern, been a while, Green Lantern. Thank you for joining us. He said, for the last month, I've been saying all the big ifs. We can beat anyone if the O-line cleans up penalties, if Michigan Quinn returns. If we struggle against University of Florida 9 games in, then we are who we are. Yeah, the Michigan Quinn, I agree. That was the best version of Quinn Ewers we've seen all season prior to the injury. And I think if the healthier he gets, you can get back to that. That's the best he's handled pressure. We talked about this. I mean, he had a higher pro football focus grade under pressure versus Michigan than from a clean pocket. He was magnificent versus pressure. He put the cape on, and Wink Martindale, a seasoned NFL defensive coordinator, had no answers for that Quinn Ewers. Now we get that Quinn Ewers, as I've said before, and Bobby, and I said it yesterday too. There is no juggernaut in college football right now. There is no elite team. There are some great teams, really good teams, and Texas included in that group. But there are no elite teams out there right now. You can say what you want about Oregon. We'll get to the college football playoff rankings, but they're not elite, and that includes Texas.
They got about 30 plus to Will Howard at home.
Exactly. This is a perfect opportunity for Sark to win a national title. It really is a great opportunity because Texas hasn't played their best version of football. And I agree with the Green Lantern. If we get Michigan Quinn back, Texas has as good a chance, if not a better chance, than anybody else to win it all.
Couldn't agree more.
I think the last sentence is correct. If we struggle against UF 9 games in, then we are who we are.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
After bye.
Execute. Look, if they don't execute, and they haven't executed well the last 4 games, or at least to the level they had previously, then they are who they are. I agree with you. But I have some hope that they show us a little something, and the week off helps, as well as getting Quinn Ewers back and going. Hey, we got a little breaking news here. Matt, our producer, has this, guys. Eugene Wilson, the Gators wide receiver, expected to miss the remainder of the season following surgery on Tuesday. Rod, he did not play against Georgia, but there was some thought he might be back for Texas. That's now kaput. This is the one player on Florida's roster that really scared Texas as a receiver. They've got a great group of running backs, so that's not in question. But this was the receiver that everybody kind of circled and said, hey, you got to maybe put a safety over the top of him. And that's not the case now, apparently. Unfortunate again.
Wilson got hurt September 7th against Stanford. He's been recovering, trying to get back on the field again. As Bobby was saying, he was expected to be trying, questionable, maybe probable against Texas after not playing against Georgia. Obviously now not the case. The guy to watch now is Elijah Badger, a guy who was, I believe, transferred in from Arizona State before the season. He's a guy that can go, and he's got a receptions of 77, 58, 38 this year. He's your big play guy right now for Florida. He had 2 catches for 36 yards against Georgia this past weekend. And with a backup quarterback, a third-string quarterback now, the issue becomes how do you get him the ball to do what he can do after the catch? That's going to be an issue. And fortunately for Texas, backup quarterback again, they're going to be finding ways to pin their ears back and stop the run, get after the quarterback.
Yep. No, you're right. I mean, and do we know if Montrell Johnson, the running back who wasn't available also in the game or the last couple of weeks, I don't think he's been available. He was started off the season as their top running back. If he's not going to be available either, we don't know about his status. That's another skill guy that really could be, a problem for Texas. Jaden Boss, the other running back, and Jacoby Jackson. So they actually do. This may be, what do you got? Second best group of running backs if Montrell Johnson is available. Texas faced. It's a good group.
Who was first? Georgia,
maybe.
ETN.
Because ETN has NFL moves out there. They didn't do well as a rushing unit. But there were a couple of times he set up the Texas defense. He did nicely, like NFL blitz.
Yeah, I really like the Jaden Baugh kid from Florida. I think he might end up being special a little bit. So watch for him. Not saying the other guys aren't good running backs. Florida has good running backs, guys, just like Texas does, right? I mean, Texas and Florida rarely don't have running backs. What I would say is that according to the guy that we had on this morning, David Waters from Gators Breakdown on Coffee and Football, he thinks Montrell Johnson plays this week. Was almost to go against Georgia and was a game time decision. So he thinks Montrell Johnson, who is their best running back, likely goes on Saturday. So while they're losing Eugene Wilson and most likely DJ Lagway, they're going to get back maybe their best offensive player overall.
Yeah, Montrell Johnson was a second-team All-SEC running back coming into the year to give you guys kind of an idea.
He's at the end transferred.
Lost his job out to Johnson at the end of last year. So talented running back. The issue is if you can't offset that running game with something in the passing game to make Texas light in the box, doesn't matter. And I think that's where a lot of confidence is coming from the Texas side. Obviously, Texas being a 21-point favorite by Vegas. I don't know if many expected that to be the case, even with Florida kind of being quote-unquote down this year coming into the game. Also, we're seeing some questions on DJ Lagway. What's his availability? The injury availability report comes out tomorrow night, probably around 7 o'clock. We'll then get an idea from Billy Napier what to expect for his status. Of course, I'm leaning towards the side of not seeing Lagway, but he certainly gave the coach speak in sense of not leaving it completely off the table for a return for Lagway. But I think that'd be a superhero effort if he's out there with one hamstring, basically.
I can't believe that he wouldn't be out, man. I don't know that I've ever seen a player carted off the field that played the next game.
I agree.
That's a great point. That's a great point.
At any level.
Yeah. You're right about that. It's pretty grim. I'm with you on that. I don't think you're going to see him. I think it's gamesmanship, and it's smart, by the way, smart by him. It forces Texas to at least have to be responsible and do their due diligence and prepare the guys, use the limited practice time they have to have multiple game plans in place. So it's a smart thing to do. Texas did it too with Quinn earlier this season. Same thing. But I think ultimately there's no way you see him. It's an Aiden Warner show. And then getting back to what CJ mentioned, do they have a vertical passing game with the third string transfer walk-on quarterback from Yale? And I don't think they do at all. But I would say it might be if Montrell Johnson plays, I don't know if you have played a better group of running backs.
I don't. Look,
that's a good group.
I like Frazier as the backup for Georgia, but I don't like him as much as I like Jaden Baugh.
Yeah, and Jacoby Jackson's averaging what, over 5 yards per carry. I mean, he's like, so if Montreal Johnson plays, that'll be the threat. But CJ, you're right. Once Texas adjusts by stacking box, and Elijah Badger, I forget the other guys' names.
Mizell
was good.
And a couple. Can they win some one-on-ones if they get those downfield? That'll be on whether Aiden Warner can press the issue, but I'm not sure he can. All right. Thank you guys for the question there. Let's get back to a couple of questions here. Then we'll review the college football playoff rankings that came out earlier today, and also a little recruiting nugget for you guys. We'll review that. Duke says the level of athletes in the SEC is drastically better. There are no easy outs. Yeah, you want to be the best, you got to play the best. Yeah, I mean, I think Texas is I think the penalties are part of that, guys. The holdings. So I think that's part of them adjusting not only to the officiating, but to the speed and the athleticism or the explosiveness of the athletes they're playing as compared to the Big 12, because that's the biggest difference is the lines of scrimmage. So it would stand to reason that the offensive line may have the biggest transition from Big 12 play to SEC play, not necessarily the quarterbacks, not necessarily the wide receivers or skill position guys, because the Big 12 wasn't necessarily behind the rest of college football in that respect. Everybody knows the SEC is the king when it comes to lines of scrimmage. And, that's maybe where Texas is having to make their biggest leap. Not they don't have the bodies, because Stark has emphasized big humans, but those big humans adapting their methods, their technique, their fundamentals to SEC style of play, week in and week out.
Yeah, on the flip side, they've done a great job of getting speed for their edge rushers, right? So far this season, Texas has 14 holding penalties called against opponents. So that's helping in their own right. And I don't think, Bobby, you could probably point this out better than I am. When's the last time Texas had 14 holding penalties in the Big 12? We still got 4 games to go.
The advent of the Big 12, probably. I agree with that. I would say one other thing that needs to be mentioned. I'm of the opinion that the skill positions for the Big 12, while generally not as big, are just as good overall.
I agree.
And as the SEC, the one thing I will say, the corners and the safeties tend to be bigger, maybe not as fast as the Big 12. So I think there's a real emphasis on speed in the Big 12, whereas in the SEC, they think you got to be both because they know you got to play the run a little bit more and feel like, I'm in this, the level of athletes is correct, I guess is what I'm saying, on a holistic space position. But there are certain places where I think the Big 12, especially at receiver, for example, I think there are more skilled receivers or were more skilled receivers at times in the Big 12 than the SEC.
Oh, and yeah.
Maybe because they were running, catching 100 balls a time. And here, I mean, other than Luther Burden, anybody going to catch 60 balls or one of the Ole Miss kids going to catch 60, 70 passes this year?
No, I agree with you, Bobby. I agree. I think the quarterback play was also a big part of that. I mean, even now, Shadur Sanders is probably the top quarterback in the class. Quinn's one of your better quarterbacks in class. He's coming from the Big 12. The Big 12's always had great offensive schemes and great offensive skilled talent as a result of fit in those schemes. And I think some of the defensive, like back 7 defenders, actually have adapted well. The only thing the Big 12 was really missing elite level was lines of scrimmage for everybody. That just wasn't the emphasis, and hard because it's hard to recruit lines of scrimmage players because the truth is, if you go look at it, a lot of them are in SEC country. That's where you get them. I don't know what that's what we can do a deep study on that and what the sociological reason for that is or whatever. But SEC country, nobody produces line of scrimmage talent like SEC country. Big Ten's got some of those states too, but the Big 12 really doesn't. Texas is the heart of recruiting in the Big 12, and hell, man, there's only so much line of scrimmage talent to go around. All right, speaking of line of scrimmage talent, how about this one from Dylan? Possible Fasusi, possible flip.
Let's ask CJ about that because I know he talked to Jerry today at length about this.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting one, right? You know, and it kind of comes down to three teams. It's going to be Texas, Oklahoma, and kind of from the outside, it's going to be Texas A&M. Remember, when he made his decision to commit to Oklahoma, it was over Texas. And A&M, again, in the race, but kind of sitting off to the sideline, just trying to get a phone call answered. But right now, when you start looking at Oklahoma and what's a best case scenario for Oklahoma, it's playoff berth, right? It's that you retain the offensive staff. It's that Bill Bedenbaugh is on staff next year. It's a little bit different at Texas right now. And of course, that pitch to the field, that probably favors the Sooners because they just don't have the pieces or the depth at offensive line. But that means something when jobs are at stake, when you start hearing the buzz of, well, we don't know if Venables is going to be around very long. You want to commit to a guy that has staff stability. And right now, Texas, Coach Flood, this whole staff right now, the only way that they're leaving is to go to head coaches somewhere else. And that's not necessarily the situation in Oklahoma. So it's kind of opened up over the last week or two. You know, Texas has been receiving some phone interest from Michael Fasusi. Steve Sarkisian was in Louisville to watch him play last week. So we'll see. If he gets down to campus, it gets really interesting. But at least that line of communication is back up and open for Michael Fasusi in Texas, whereas probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, it was not.
Yeah, I don't know how you stick with Oklahoma considering the offensive identity crisis they're going through right now. Tough to ask any big-time prospect to stick with Oklahoma. I don't know what the vision you sell. What are you selling to the recruits on the offensive side of the ball? We'll see what they do about that. That'd be a hell of a win for Oklahoma if they can keep him committed. All right, thank you for the question. We appreciate that. Let's thank another one of our sponsors before we move on. The Carrot Concierge. All right, gentlemen, we're getting close to the holiday season. I know how guys are because I'm the same way. I'm a dude. All right, guys being dudes. We like to procrastinate and take our time. I'm telling you, don't procrastinate. And even if you do procrastinate, you need to hit up the carrotconcierge.com. All right. If you are looking for a special gift for that special person in your life, no matter what the occasion, all right, it could be an anniversary, could be a birthday. We got the holidays gift giving season coming up. Jody Reynolds is fantastic, folks. She is a personal jeweler and she is the Carrot Concierge with an office right there in Westlake. Jody focuses on helping men purchase the special gift for the women in their life. You can use the QR code right there. We'll get that put up on the screen for you. Use that QR code, or you can visit her on Instagram at thecarrotconcierge.com. You can go visit her website there as well. Jody prides herself in providing personal service. She takes the extra steps to make sure your lady gets exactly what she wants. And because she doesn't have the overhead of a storefront, she often can get the highest quality inventory at the lowest possible prices, as much as 30% less than what you see at a jewelry store. That's right, folks. So if you're looking for that very special gift for that very special person in your life, birthdays, anniversaries, you got Christmas right around the corner, Jody has a variety of tennis bracelets, rings, necklaces, and more. All beautiful jewelry, all personalized for you and yours. Check out thecarrotconcierge.com. Visit her website or give her a call today or give her a text and take care of that very special person in your life. That's thecarrotconcierge.com. Thank you very much to Jody and her team for sponsoring our team here at On Texas Football. We appreciate her very much. All right. And by the way, guys, seriously, do yourself a favor. Go check out thecarrotconcierge.com. Don't stress too much about the holiday season. She'll make sure you got the perfect gift for that special person in your life. All right, let's get back to the college football playoff rankings here, guys. They came out today. There's a lot of breaking news in this country today, but this is the breaking news we're talking about. The college football playoff rankings came out earlier today, and as you can see there, the Longhorns are at number they're right there, listed right there at number 5 for you.
Six.
I apologize. Number 6 in the college football playoff rankings there. Number 1, Oregon. Number 2, Ohio State. Number 3, Georgia. They have number 4, Miami. Says there, Longhorns at 5. You got Penn State 6, Tennessee 7, Indiana at 8. BYU makes it 9. Then Notre Dame at 10. Alabama makes it at number 11, and Boise State there at 12. The only 2-loss team that makes it into the top 12 of the college football playoff rankings. The first one is the Alabama Crimson Tide. Everybody else either undefeated or at a 1-loss team here. You got 4 SEC teams, you got 4 Big Ten teams, gentlemen. You also end up having 1 representative for the Big 12, 1 representative from the ACC. You also got Notre Dame. They play by their own rules. And you got 1 group of 5, a group of 6 representative, and that is right now Boise State. Thoughts on the first college football playoff rankings, guys?
I think that we went over this early in this video, and I completely continue to believe the same thing. 4 SEC, 4 Big Ten teams in this group. And guess what? Of the first teams out, there's also another SEC team. So I think it looks, if Indiana, for instance, goes out and loses to Ohio State and then looks really bad doing it, I could see a 1-loss Big Ten team getting nixed. I'm just telling you. I think A&M being there at 14 right now tells me that there's going to be at least 2, if not 3, SEC teams with 2 losses that go to the playoff. It's where I'm at right now.
It's going to be interesting. My whole conversation in the last few weeks is how many bid stealers will you have, right? We talk about in college basketball all the time. Teams that win conference championships that shouldn't, right? 17 makes a Cinderella run, wins the conference championship from a mid-major. Now all of a sudden they're going dance and taking a spot away from, a team that was at large. Maybe we're seeing that a little bit with Alabama, but there's with Indiana. Alabama probably in this conversation from start to finish. But my point being is, does BYU win it outright for the Big 12? If not, do they get 2 teams in? If SMU is able to beat Miami in that ACC championship, do 2 teams get in? And then that starts to make things pretty hairy for the Texas Longhorns, especially if they don't come out of College Station with a victory. Now, if Texas wins out, they have no issue because they're in the SEC championship game. They'll be in the college football playoff. But it does get pretty hairy. It gets pretty nasty if things start to get cloudy and bid sealers start to become more and more of an issue, and Texas doesn't end up winning the conference or making it to Atlanta to play for the SEC championship game.
Does the loser of the SEC title game get in automatically?
I would say so, because that's the 2 top teams and the best conference in college football. Okay. I would think that's a lock. Now, if it becomes a 7-8 team tie somehow, some way, in one of those nightmare situations, then it becomes a bit of a toss-up, because that's.
Let me ask you this. What if Georgia and Alabama go back to the SEC championship game and Georgia beats Alabama by 3 touchdowns? Alabama still go?
There will be a 3-loss Alabama then, right?
I would think so.
Ooh.
That's the argument. I mean, you lost the best team in the country, the number 2 team in the country twice.
Yeah, but they also lost to Tennessee.
Sorry, I got that.
And they lost to Vanderbilt.
Yep.
Yeah.
They beat Georgia the first time.
Yep.
That would be interesting. Yeah, that I'm not sure about, honestly. I don't know. Because I agree with CJ. I think normally the SEC title game loser would automatically get in.
They should. Theoretically, you're right, CJ.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be the eyeball test.
Yeah, there's still some beauty pageant stuff in here, right? You got to look good while you do it a little bit.
Yeah,
we're doing eyeball tests, and I wanted to get some thoughts, because when watching the college football playoff revealing show, there were 2 moments that really kind of made me go, ooh, really? How is that a thing? One, how is Army ranked behind Missouri? If we're going off of eyeball tests there, that's an issue. Army hasn't trailed a single second this season. They're the only team in the country that can say that. They're 8-0. I understand it's Army. I understand who they're playing.
Yeah.
You talk about the best G5 team. Listen, the best G5 team hasn't trailed the entire season. Boise State's in that conversation. Obviously, they lost to Oregon, the number 1 team. But my goodness, I thought being at 25 behind Missouri, who has not looked good the last 6 weeks, maybe, that was pretty disrespectful there as well. And then I wanted to get y'all's thoughts on the topic of strength of schedule, because that's popped up with Texas, right? I think they're sitting in the mid-50s right now. Indiana, that's also been a topic of conversation with them. I think they're sitting at 103rd. My thing there, Indiana and Texas for the most part, everybody that they've played and they've beat, with the exception of Texas and Vanderbilt, they've blown out. So if that's what your, kind of conversation is to keep them out of the playoff or to bump them down in seeding, listen, Indiana's beat every opponent they've played this year by 14. Texas, until Vanderbilt, who they had to go on the road to play a top 25 team at the time, they won by 3. It probably should have been 17. But the conversation there is they handedly beat Oklahoma. They handedly beat Michigan on the road. Everybody that they were playing, Mississippi State at home. I know that that's not a top-end SEC team, but they smacked them in a game in which they didn't play their best. So if that's the conversation in which strength of schedule is one of those deterrents for ranking teams higher where they are, listen, go watch how they're beating teams. Indiana's smacking teams. Texas, early in the year, they were smacking teams. Now, Texas needs to go do that the rest of the year. But right now, that's my big point in counter to strength of schedules being one of those conversations against teams right now.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. The strength of schedule, more and more that's going to become strength of your wins and, your overall resume. Now that the college football playoff rankings are out, that's going to become a big topic of conversation. Let me ask you guys about the seeding here, just hypothetical. Texas is ranked number 5, but here they would be the 6th seed playing up against Alabama, the 11th seed. CJ, you were talking about this earlier, and I asked you guys the bye week. How important is it to get that bye week if you can get it, as opposed to the teams that are going to have to play, obviously early on that first round and then make their way all through this college football playoff. What are your thoughts? The teams in the bye week, how significant of an advantage is it for these teams?
I still think it's very significant. Of course, if Texas wants to go out and win a national championship game with the way that they're scheduled to be in right now, they're probably getting a bye, not playing in the SEC championship game as the 3rd SEC team here, but they're the 2nd team. So they would be playing in the SEC championship game. That would be 8 straight weeks if they wanted to win a national championship game of do or die football against pretty good football teams, right? You're including games on the road against Arkansas, Texas A&M, the SEC championship game, and then against Alabama, Miami, Georgia, and then likely Oregon in this situation. That's not easy. So to get a bye, that gives me a lot more of optimism and hope that a national championship run could exist. Because if you go to the SEC championship game and lose, you got to turn back right around and go play for your lives once again to make it into the first round, second round of the college football playoff. And that's a tough ask. I think that is a tall hill to climb. So finding a way to have a bye one way or the other is pretty important for me. It's just a tough thing to maneuver. How do you ask yourself to not make the SEC championship game if you're not looking likely to win it, right? I don't think you can do that.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. It's it'll be interesting to see what the for the Longhorns, going forward. Obviously, best scenario, you win out, go into the SEC title game, win it, and get the bye. But it doesn't always work out that way. All right, let's get back to a couple of the questions here. Jeff says, hey, what is causing our troubles in the run game? 1, our running back aren't as talented as last year. 2, receivers not blocking downfield. Or 3, the SEC has bigger and faster players in the Big 12. Is there a D, all of the above, Jeff? Maybe I'd take D. Probably all of the above. No, you know what? I would say the receivers are blocking downfield, though. Receivers are blocking really well downfield. So I'll take that out of it. So I can't say D. It ain't D.
I think I'll be honest. I think Isaiah Bond a much better blocker than Adonai Mitchell. I mean, no offense to Mitchell.
Yeah.
But,
No, you're right about that.
He was a liability as a blocker.
Yeah.
Rod, just tell me what you think here. I think it's personnel. And I don't think it's the offensive line. I think it's personnel, and I think on both sides of the ball, the Texas running backs and the defenses they're playing. That's what I think. It has nothing to do with the Texas offensive line.
Really?
I think it's just Texas. I think it's just personnel.
Okay.
I really do. I mean, Jonathan Brooks and Cedric Baxter were starting ahead of the 2 guys that are starting now for Texas.
Yep.
Right? I mean, that's my take.
It's not a bad one.
It really would be interesting, and it's obviously unfortunate that Baxter's out for the year. But what would this offense look like if you could rely on him, right? He was a big focal point of closing out that Alabama game, as a true freshman in his second career game. So what would this offense look like? That's the hypothetical that's fun, but also at the same time not fun because you have to sit back and think, man, we don't have him. So
The reason he started over Jonathan Brooks last year early was pass protection.
Yep.
You don't think he's not a better pass protector than Trey Wisner and Jaden Blue?
Well, that's even kind of further on that conversation, Bobby. Texas doesn't have a big body in the running back room. They don't have anybody that can step in and take the blow of an Anthony Hill coming off the edge, quote unquote. All these running backs right now, at least you could look back. Roshan Johnson, big guy. Jonathan Brooks, big body. CJ Baxter, a bigger body, right? That was the conversation. Now you're sitting there with a 6-foot running back, a 5'11" running back, all of them weighing about, maybe a hair over 200 pounds. It's a tough task.
Yeah, that's a good point. And Bobby, you may be right about that. I mean, we've been talking about the offensive line. Maybe we've been a little too tough on them in the run game. Could just be possible they just don't have the backs that are able to maximize those type of runs.
The backs and who they're playing. That's what I meant by personnel on both sides of the ball.
Yep. Yeah. Line of scrimmage league. The SEC, better linebacker play. I think better D-line play overall, period.
Safety more committed to the run too, Rod. That's what I meant. It's like I was talking earlier, just more committed to the run.
Yep. No, I don't disagree with that. I think it's been a pleasant surprise seeing guys like Trey Wisner step up, but there's no doubt there's a reason CJ Baxter, like you said, he beat out Jonathan Brooks, who, by the way, should make his first, debut, or at least gets his first NFL action, I believe, this week. If I'm not mistaken.
I'm excited for it.
Right?
My fantasy league thanks him. I got him for we do a bid league, and I got him very cheaply because he wasn't going to play. But now I need a running back, and I'm ready for him to get going.
Yeah, like I said, JT Sanders. So it'd be interesting because JT Sanders is already balling out for him, and Jonathan Brooks, I think before long, once he rounds into form, he'll be the starting running back for the Panthers too. So there you go. But yeah, you missed those guys because turns out they were special. Jonathan Brooks was a special back, no question about that. All right, thank you for the question, Jeff. We appreciate that. Let's get to how about this one from Dan. He says Sark don't want no parts of Kalen DeBoer. If he was matched up in that college football playoff, I believe the current rankings would have Kalen DeBoer and Sark match up. You know what? That's a little rivalry developing. You've met him in back-to-back years. If you see him again, that'd be 3 years in a row. In the postseason, you've seen Kalen DeBoer. That'd be pretty wild. Like, what are the odds? And how often has that happened for any, for any coaching coaching duo in terms of going up against each other, coaching rivalry, I should say. Have we seen them go up against each other 3 times in a postseason? That'd be pretty wild.
Was there Nick Saban, Kirby Smart ever?
I'm sure probably was, but think about it. You're putting it on that level, though. It doesn't happen very often. It's very rare.
If I'm Sark, I don't want to play DeBoer. I'll be honest. I don't want to see him again. Anybody else?
If I'm Pete Kwiatkowski, I don't want to see him.
Yeah.
It's not so much about Steve Sarkisian. Sark's offense hasn't been that bad. It's been the defense.
No, Sark's been he's been rising in terms of in the coaching hierarchy in college football, but he has not been able to topple Kalen DeBoer. Kalen DeBoer has had his number the last couple of years.
Even Nansen, I'm sure you don't want to see DeBoer. Last year, Washington beat Arizona 31-24. Michael Penix threw for 360. So I'm sure all of them are sitting there thinking, anybody but him.
Yeah, I agree with that. How about this one from Michael? He says, what time do you want the UT versus A&M game? It's going to be a primetime game, isn't it?
Under the lights. That's the only answer.
A&M's too good for it not to be a primetime game now.
Under the lights. Give it to me.
Uh-oh. Bobby doesn't want this. He's stressing out about it.
I'd like it at 11 a.m., please. I don't know what y'all. I mean, if it were in DKR, give me prime time.
See, that's just paranoia, Bobby. It's gonna be great for the rekindling of the rivalry. It's in prime time, and but you don't want the Aggies that lubed up and that excited.
I think the entire state of Texas will be lubed up. I mean,
yeah,
crazy. Hey, we need to say thank you to one of our sponsors, Rod, before we get going.
Yes,
if you don't mind, that's Mark Saunders. When it comes to protecting all of your stuff, wouldn't it be great to have one place that protects it all? Here's some good news. Texas Allstate agent Mark Saunders, serving the Austin and Round Rock area and all of Texas, is the only local insurance agent you need. Everything from your home, car, and boat to your motorcycle, RV, and ATV. Call Texas Allstate agent Mark Saunders' office today, 512-218-8571. Are you in good hands? With more than 35 years of experience, you will be with Texas alum Mark Saunders. If you're looking for someone local to the Austin, Round Rock area and all of Texas, give them a call, 512-218-8571. Thanks, Mark, for your sponsorship of On Texas Football.
Thank you very much, Bobby, and thank you to Mark Saunders as well. A couple of questions or comments here before we end our live stream. Burnt Orange Horn says, Taft going to the draft this year? Listen, Taft is having a hell of a year. He's having one of the best years, honestly, for any DB in college football. He really is. He's having a fan. I don't know if Taft Daddy is going to get drafted. I'll just say this. I think he ends up getting a shot to make it on a roster. There's no doubt about that. He'll get in a training camp and have a shot to make a roster. And I won't bet against Taft Daddy because coming from a walk-on to end up starting at safety at the University of Texas it's a Herculean task, guys. I can't tell you how tough that is. I've been in that DB room. That ain't easy. They don't want walk-on to start. I'm just saying right now, that coaching, there's nothing against them. They don't hate on them. But ideally, they want the guys they recruited with the high ceilings, 4 or 5 stars. They want those guys to start. For Taft Daddy to do, that's why I call him Taft Daddy. To do what he did, I add the daddy, because to do what he did, to go from the back of that defensive back room to end up taking multiple guys reps and snaps and end up starting at DB and then earning a scholarship, it might be the toughest thing to do in college football. I don't know if there is a tougher thing to do. And he's going to go to the NFL. I think I have to do it the tough way there too. As an undrafted free agent and make a roster, I'm not going to doubt him. I wouldn't.
No. He's going to impress in all the interviews too. Everything that leads up to it, talking to GM, scouts, personnel guys, he's going to impress them maybe more than anybody in the draft this year.
Yeah.
And he is a junior by year.
Okay, so he could come back.
Excuse me, he's a junior by official designation, but a senior by year. And so he's got a decision to make. He
should come back. No, I'm serious. I know that sounds like, he's not gonna do that. I don't think he's going to get drafted. I'm not saying. So that's why I think he should come. If you're not going to get drafted, come back. And with the NIL, obviously being the law of the land. And by the way, next season, revenue sharing comes in. Right? Don't we get revenue sharing coming in next season? You get revenue sharing on top of NIL at Texas, and you already, have pretty much a starting spot there. I would say just come back. So I didn't realize that, Bobby. I'd tell him to come back if I was him. But like I said, I'm not hating on him. I do think if he gets into a training camp, all bets are off. I wouldn't doubt the young man can impress somebody. And Texas had numerous stories like that of undrafted free agents making rosters. So Taft Daddy can easily be one of those stories. But
I've got a question for I don't know. We've got some older guys in this chat that I see here. Does anybody remember? And this is going to be before your time, Rod. It's even before me a tad bit. Does anybody remember if John Hagee from San Antonio Marshall? I remember what high school he came out of. Do you remember if he was a walk-on at Texas or if he was a last-minute scholarship? From David McWilliams. Hagee played for the Bills. He was the last guy I think I can think of that I thought was a walk-on, but ended up making it into the NFL as
called him a hitman. Was that his name? Hitman?
He was now Dylan Haynes was a walk-on and started at Texas, but he didn't make the NFL.
No.
I mean, there's been other safeties that have Marcus Griffin was a walk-on and started at Texas.
Yep.
But it's a rare one that they actually go
to the league.
to the NFL.
Yeah,
so I'm interested on that. I'll do some looking up, and I may ask John Bianco.
And he was drafted in the eighth round. Well, they don't have 8 rounds anymore, but he was drafted in the 8th round.
He played for a while.
He played from 88 to 93.
Yeah,
the
Bills,
time.
right?
Yeah, Bills, Oilers, Chiefs, Seahawks. You're right, Bobby. I can't think of a
a walk-on that ended up.
No, not a walk. Undrafted free agent, but not a walk-on that also ended up making. I can't think of one.
Guys, this is where I'm at right now.
527. I have no idea.
Google it. You're damn right. This is what old people like to do, Damone. We like to sit around and ponder. Well, I wonder if it is. And young people are like, see you like this. What are we doing?
Type it on his phone. I love it.
We like to ponder. All right. Sorry about that, Damone. We wanted to ponder right for a while. All right. Thank you very much for the question. We appreciate it. Oh, real quick before we get out of here, Todd has one question. I think it'll lead us to a relevant topic. Then we can end the live stream. How will the Hicks reclassification affect safety recruiting / portal acquisition after the season? CJ, for those who haven't heard, this was something you tweeted about. The Zelus Hicks reclassification. Explain that to folks and then dive into a little bit about how that'll affect safety portal acquisition recruiting in the recruiting class.
Yeah, so Texas 2026 commit Zelus Hicks out of Georgia reclassified to the 25 class, so he'll be on campus for next year rather than going into his senior season. That means Texas now has defensive back commitments from Jonah Williams and Hicks at the safety position. You can go ahead and put a bow on that safety spot in this class. Texas is still recruiting Grayson Littleton out of the SEC territory this year as well. More so a cornerback, 6 foot, 175, 180 pounds. He's a true cornerback in my eyes. So at safety, Texas is done for 25 with Jonah Williams and now Zelus Hicks, which means depending on, and we just talked about it, what does Michael Taft do? What does this safety room look like? Do you have health for the spring? Then you could talk about the portal and maybe going on adding a piece to the safety room, depending on what it looks like for the spring. Of course, Texas feels good about Jordan Johnson-Rubel and the development of Xavier Filsaime. Jelani McDonald will be back. We'll see, obviously, what happens with Derek Williams and his knee recovery and the decision Michael Taft will have. But adding Zelus Hicks and Jonah Williams to that group, it certainly puts you into a really strong spot for next fall when you come around rolling into fall camp for the 2025 season.
All right. Good stuff there, CJ. Appreciate it. Also, we appreciate our sponsors for tonight's live stream. We're really grateful to our friends over at Duck Camp as well, duckcamp.com. Go check it out for yourself. Mark Saunders and his team, we appreciate him as well. Our friends over at HardGR Roofing. Thank you very much to our friends over at HardGR Roofing as well. We appreciate them hooking us up for our live stream and being a sponsor here. And also, thank guys for joining us tonight. Really appreciate all of your participation in the show tonight, and appreciate you guys and helping us build this on Texas football community. Also, the Carrot Concierge, don't let me forget. And guys, if you are procrastinating, you haven't thought about holiday shopping, go to the carrotconcierge.com. Trust me, you can thank me later for that, or thank us later for that. Thank you very much to Matthew behind the scenes, always doing a great job. Matthew is the real MVP. Thank you, CJ, for all of your expertise. Bobby, we appreciate all the nuggets of wisdom as always. Tomorrow, don't forget, guys, we'll be back for Coffee and Football starting at 8 a.m. We got a Wednesday night, 7 p.m. live stream. They'll have an injury report that we'll be getting into, talk more college football playoff rankings, and, of course, the Longhorns' upcoming opponent, the Florida Gators. Until next time, for Bobby and for Matthew and for CJ Vogel, thank you to all you guys. We appreciate it, and hook 'em horns.
Get well soon, Blake.
Get well soon, Blake. Yep. And Cole. Yep.